Hey guys, it's that time of year again. Intel just released Haswell, its highly anticipated 4th generation Core series processor. I'm joined by Colin of Gigabyte. And you guys you're coming off of an amazing year last year. You sold more motherboards than you ever have before?
Yeah, we sold about 18.5 million motherboards last year.
And the previous year?
It was around 17 million.
Okay. So you're doing that, you're going into Haswell, and Haswell is it's a very interesting turning point for Intel, right? Because it's a very mobile-focused architecture, but there's still a lot of goodness on the desktop side. And one of the things that you're saying that you guys are doing this year is you're bringing a lot of your very, very high-end overclocking features down to somewhat more accessible price points.
Yeah, because before we always focused on overclocking features or gaming features. They always had to be at the high end. Mm-hmm. This year we sort of reevaluated that and decided that, hey, maybe overclocking features can be on the mainstream boards as well. So we came up with a range of different boards that have different features at different price points. Actually, this guy in front of us here, this OC board, this is our mainstream overclocking motherboard. But it's kind of unique in that it has all of our overclocking features for the series on this board. So it'll be a pretty competitive price point for overclockers.
So it's kind of like your traditionally it used to be that you had kind of gaming and overclocking together at the high end, and then you just defeatured as you went down the stack. But now it sounds like you've split the stack, so you now have this path of performance mainstream up to high end just for overclockers and something just for gamers. And
yeah, because at Gigabyte we feel that overclockers are a different market than gamers. Obviously, some overclockers are gamers, but things that gamers need for their games, maybe the overclockers don't need.
Interesting.
High-end audio is one of them. So
we're going to go through both of those, and I want to start with overclocking because I think this is a really unique balance of what you guys are doing in terms of feature set, both on the hardware and software side. But we'll definitely get to some of the audio stuff, especially as it applies to your gaming board shortly here. Okay, so this is your Z87X OC?
Correct.
And where is this? Like, how much does this cost?
So I think pricing is still being finalized, but it's going to be around our UD4 segment.
Okay.
So pricing is maybe around $200 US.
Okay. And what's special about this?
So definitely this motherboard is designed by our in-house overclocker, HiCookie.
Okay.
So he put in all the features that he wanted on an overclocking motherboard on this board. One of the first things that you can obviously notice is this bracket right here.
Yeah.
This is called the OC brace. Most overclockers have their system set up in an open testbench platform. One of the issues with that is obviously there's no support for the graphics cards.
Yep. No, that's a problem we run into because we do open air testing as well.
Yeah,
it's kind of neat. So do you actually see, is there a big market for people who test like we do? I just assume that I'm the weirdo that does that.
No, there's more and more people that want overclocking buttons on the board. They want nice and fancy lights because they have it in an open system, open chassis. We're seeing more and more demand for that.
Cool. So this just snaps on and this effectively approximates just a part of a case for you guys.
Yep.
Cool.
So it ships with all the boards in the box.
Nice. Okay, so what do you have? You have that's obviously a very useful feature for people who do open air. But how does an overclocker get any benefit out of this board?
So we have, like I said, a lot of overclocking features on board. Maybe I'll just start in this segment over here, this section. You can see all of our hardware overclocking buttons on board here. And I'll kind of start from the top to the bottom. So this guy, these dip switches here basically control the PCI Express lanes. So it'll actually give power or turn the power off. So if you're wanting to test only one card and you have 4 cards in or 3 cards, you can actually disable the other cards without having to physically remove them.
That's really cool. And why would someone, I know why I'd want to do that, but why would someone else want to do that?
So if you're doing different benchmark records, if you're doing 4-way and then you want to go to a single card, it just makes it easier not having to physically remove the cards, especially if you're doing overclocking and you have maybe pods on the side of the cards for cooling. Having to physically remove those cards takes a long time.
Gotcha.
Plus all your installation you have to redo. And
no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you have that, which is kind of useful, and then you've got all these buttons. What do all of these do?
Yeah, so I think maybe I'll just start from the top. So basically we have system reset right here. This is this button. Mm-hmm. We also have memory safe button right here. This memory safe button basically, if you have too tight of timings on your memory and your system blue screens, this will go to the last safe memory timings. It'll go to actually a looser memory timing so that your system will be able to boot without you having to go into BIOS and changing those settings.
Okay, or without having to do a full reset of your BIOS settings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that seems to be the trend with a lot of what you've been telling me about here, is that you're trying to make it easy to recover just individual portions of your BIOS.
Yeah, basically overclockers have told us, look, we don't want to spend a lot of time to accomplish certain things.
Yeah.
So we've tried to cut off, I mean, even seconds matter to them. If they're doing the same thing, 10 times in a row, that those seconds start to add up.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's annoying to even me, right? When I set up my test bed the way I want it and I change something and now I have to reset the entire, EFI or BIOS settings. It's super annoying. So I can definitely empathize.
Yeah, so another one of those sort of features, this guy right here is a direct to BIOS feature.
Okay.
This one, basically, when you enable it, it'll go directly to the BIOS screen without you having to press delete 20,000 times.
Yes, which is super annoying because it's always like it's a combination of your board and what graphics card you have and what USB port you're plugged into, just how easy it is to actually get in there. So I can see that being really useful.
Yeah, and then there's also a settings lock. This is the next button.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, settings lock allows you to, if you do an overclocking profile, you boot your system and it fails, this settings lock will actually take you to your last known good boot settings. So if you're overclocking, you have a high settings, high frequency or whatever you're doing. If you change it a little bit and that next one blue screens on you, this will actually take you to that last setting. So you don't have to actually go through and make all your setting changes again. You can start off from that higher sort of settings initially.
Gotcha. And that's exactly what we were just talking about, the idea that you don't have to put in a bunch of work into your setup and then redo it all just because you screwed something up.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. What else you got?
We also have these guys here. These are BIOS switchers. So basically this one will disable our dual BIOS feature. Dual BIOS, basically what happens if your BIOS fails, it'll go to your backup BIOS and your backup BIOS will then flash your main BIOS. But overclockers want to be able to disable that sometimes because they have different BIOSes on each one. So they don't want to flash with the backup BIOS. Then they end up with two BIOSes with the same BIOS, and then they have to reflash it anyway.
Now they want two different BIOSes because they're testing out different revisions. Maybe one is better for overclocking, one isn't.
Or even, one maybe is their 24/7 system BIOS, and the
Gotcha.
other ones are overclocking.
So that's a manual override for that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then the next button is a BIOS switcher, so you can actually switch between BIOSes hardware-wise.
Okay.
And there's an LED light that actually show you that as well. And then this last switch here, this is a trigger switch. This is basically for LN2 overclocking. If you get close to your settings that you want, before you run your benchmark, you want to flip this trigger switch and it'll drop your CPU frequency. That way you can load your benchmark, you flip it quick, it'll drop your frequency all the way back up to where it was. You can run your benchmark and get that screenshot before your system blue screens. So it's one of those features for overclockers.
It's truly made for overclockers.
And then we've got power buttons, reset buttons. We have voltage read points where you can read the different voltages going in the board. One of the other features here, we have OC Connect. We've actually, again, it's for overclockers who don't want to waste time. These are USB ports that are in the front of the motherboard. So obviously in a test bench platform, they're facing this side of the board. If you have to load a USB stick with maybe a BIOS or whatever, it's very inconvenient to try to find, blind the USB port.
Yeah.
So we put two right there, easy access for people to use.
And are those USB 3 ports?
Yes.
Nice.
And then another feature that we have on this board for overclocking, all of the power connectors, we're actually increasing the connector inside, the amount of metal, and it's all gold plated. This actually helps if you're using higher voltages. After time, wear and tear, these sockets can become corroded or even deformed. So we've sort of beefed up those sockets. The CPU socket, we're using 15 micron gold as well for better signaling, as well as in the memory slots and the PCI Express slots. they all have gold plating as well.
Interesting. And that's first on this board.
Yes. And that's obviously better signaling. And then another thing I want to quickly mention, we've got our 4-way graphics on this board. Mm-hmm. This board can do 3-way SLI and 4-way crossfire. We're not using a PLX chip. We found that PLX, obviously, there's some latency. So if you want to do 4-way crossfire, it's actually better to use it without a PLX chip. You'll get a slightly higher performance. This is our OC ignition button. Basically, this guy, when you press it in, this enables your system power to always be on. So even if your system is shut down, your hard drive will still spin, your CPU fan, your VGA fans, they'll all keep spinning. Basically, this is good for, one, if you're doing LN2 overclocking, it'll take time when the chipset has to turn off. This will always leave it on, so you don't have to wait those several seconds of, when you reboot your system. Mm-hmm. Actually, your system will always be, your fans will always be running and your power's always on. So you're not gonna have condensation on the board from, because your fans are actively moving at all times. It's good if you're testing a water block system, because you can test that water block, those fans, without actually having to turn the system on.
Yeah.
And even in-store displays, you don't actually have to have the system on. You can actually, run your system fans and everything and have your LED lighting on without having the system on. Yeah,
a lot of these features are actually things that I would personally use, right? I guess I never really look at the market as being people that have the same needs as me. But, as more and more folks have gotten into overclocking, and as people come up with their own kind of unique ways of using these things, then a lot of these make sense. I'm glad to see them.
Well, it's funny, too, because a lot of these features, it's designed by overclockers. Like Hi Cookie, this button right here, this OC ignition, when he told the engineers that he wanted to put that button on our board, they're like, yeah, we can do it, but why?
Exactly.
We don't understand why you'd want to do that. And plus, the amount of time it would take them to do that, they're like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But then when we actually had the board and he explained it to them, they're like, oh, yeah, like, real world usage, that makes sense. Even people who aren't overclockers, they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's really useful as a testbed platform, which is what makes me excited about it. Okay, so let's look at the software and see what you guys are doing different there. All right, so this is really cool. What are we looking at here? This is when you hit delete or you hit your little button to immediately get you into the BIOS, you get this. There's no other settings screen that you get. This is what you land on.
Yes. So this is our new UEFI dual BIOS. We completely redesigned our BIOS this year. We threw out 3D BIOS. We spent a lot of time. We listened to a lot of different people's feedback about what's useful in a BIOS, how they want to be interacting with their BIOS. Obviously, this is UEFI, so it's mouse driven, and it's definitely much more visual. Mm-hmm. So let me quickly talk about some of the main features. Obviously, this screen. You get a wealth of system information. You get your CPU status, your memory status, your system status over here, as well as down below you've got your what board you're using, what BIOS version you're using. So all your system information, as well as real-time monitoring right here, your temperature, fan speed, and voltages. So basically, this allows you to always see what's going on with your system.
What I like is that it's very dense in terms of information, but it's awesome. Like, it's all on one screen. I don't need to go anywhere else to get a good read on any of this stuff. So I really like it.
And obviously, too, for different users want different resolutions. So we have this where it gets rid of all that system information, but it gives you a higher or lower resolution for your screen. We also have you can go into the classic setup if you want. Some users are used to this and they want to continue having the classic setup, and we'll enable that for a while. But obviously, we want most people to adopt to this new setting.
And this is all customizable, right? Like, you can change what you see by default here.
Yeah, so this is your home screen here. Here you have different shortcuts. You can actually enable different shortcuts that you want. You can get rid of shortcuts. You can add shortcuts. So that can all fit onto this home screen here. And you can also, in the setup, you can actually tag different features to that home screen. So you can remove different features, you can add different features or different settings. So that way you can have all your settings that you want to adjust on that one page.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know if it's very clear here, that there are a bunch of tabs on this home screen. And what you're saying is you can configure what appears, like what features are controllable on each one of those tabs.
Yeah, so let's say you want to have your CPU base clock and you want to add that. So now it's added to your main screen. All you do, so then you see your CPU base clock here down below. You can configure it however you want. You can even set different profiles or different tags for different usage models. So, this is your performance setting. Maybe this is your regular 24-hour settings. So different settings on different screens for, depending on what your usage is.
And you still have all of the traditional UEFI settings, if you want to go in deeper and control the operation of your SATA controller and stuff like that.
Yep. So you can even do real-time overclocking, so you don't have to reboot to enable a lot of these different settings. We don't have any.
Wait, so anything I do here, it applies live?
Not everything, but things like CPU ratio and different settings, voltages. You can all do that on the fly.
Okay, interesting. And now, is there any way to delay that? Right, if I'm selecting something but I don't want it to apply right away.
Yep. So you can actually, you have the on and off buttons here. You can set what your setting is, and you have this apply button right here.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
so you don't want to apply it right away, you don't have to.
Very cool.
So that's the performance screen system. This helps you to change different information. You've got a calendar here. You can even change your background image. You can select a different file on your thumb drive that you want to use as your background wallpaper. We also have a couple of wallpapers for our different segments. Obviously, this is our OC orange theme. We also have a gaming theme and a regular theme as well.
And gaming is green, I guess?
Gaming is green.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's all your regular features that you had before. It's just much easier to access everything, and you can do a lot more customization. Eventually, we'll be adding to this as well. There's some other things that we have in mind that we want to add, but right now we're pretty happy with how we've readjusted our BIOS.
No, it's really cool. I really like what you guys have done here. Now, this is just half of the software story, though, right? Once we get into Windows, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you're going to show us.
Yeah, we completely redesigned all of our basically our software applications as well. For 8 series, we actually redesigned all of our software applications. We wanted to basically standardize them, have the same look and feel, as well as make them much more easier, all in one area, so that people can access them. They can make updates to them, and they're all in one centralized location, basically fitting this sort of Windows tile for Windows 8 theme.
Okay. But you can still kind of do the same sort of stuff you were able to do in software before. It's just now all centralized and looks a lot better.
Yeah, we've added some features that are new, but basically it's all of the same functionality.
Okay. So take us through it. What can you do here?
Okay, so this is basically our App Center interface. As you can see, these are all the different apps, Gigabyte apps that I've installed on the system.
And each time you install a new Gigabyte app, it gets added there?
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
And you can remove apps. You can make different adjustments. You can actually even change the color scheme. So right now it's orange, but I can change it to blue or green.
Can we see what blue looks like?
Sure.
Okay.
So all of these applications now will have the blue skin to them.
Gotcha. Now, so BIOS, that's how you do, I guess, in Windows updates of your firmware?
Yes, correct. At BIOS basically flashes your memory in Windows.
Okay. And
then, as you can notice, each of our utilities, it says what the utility is, and they all will have the same sort of look and feel. We've got the left sort of column for settings, as well as the main screen here for your different sort of features or items.
Now, what does USB blocker do?
So USB blocker is pretty much like its name. It'll block certain devices from your system on the USB side. So maybe, if you're in a small business setting, you don't want your employees to be, loading photos to your system or doing different things, you can block certain classes of USB devices.
That's really cool. So I can see that being very useful for someone running a kiosk or something like that. Interesting. So a lot of these features seem like they're very obviously you have the overclocking features, but a lot of these things also seem like they're very applicable to people who are running like a shop, right? Or who have a system that is going to get a lot of random use out of it. Is that kind of motivating some of this stuff?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. More than almost 50% now of our business is in China, and a huge part of our business in China is at internet cafes.
Okay.
So definitely from that standpoint, the owners of that system want to be able to control what their customers are doing on that system.
No, this makes a lot of sense. So what happens here? Is it just physically disabling the port?
Yep, just physically disables it. Obviously here you can see the different devices that are blocked or not unblocked. All of them right now are actually unblocked. And
I'm assuming you can set a password on this so people can't just go in here and do whatever.
Yep, correct.
Got it. And then so EasyTune, that's your kind of how what you used to refer to all of your basically UEFI settings in Windows. And that's still the case here?
Yep. So you can do overclocking, systems settings, all from EasyTune. Our last generation was EasyTune 6, but we've gotten rid of the number, and it's now just EasyTune.
Okay.
And basically, we've completely, again, redesigned the look and feel. Down below, you'll have the hardware monitor here, so you can see your different hardware settings, your CPU frequency, your B clock, your different voltages, your different fan speeds, all from this sort of information bar that always will stay there for you.
And you can adjust all of these things on the fly, or most of them.
So let me quickly go into, this is our Smart QuickBoost section. Basically, this will allow you to do different levels of overclocking. You can do a light, medium, extreme overclocking. These are pre-configured settings based on what your CPU settings are, or what your hardware is, I should say. And you also have energy saving mode or default. And then advanced mode, that'll actually take you to more overclocking friendly features.
So those predefined profiles, those are basically, it looks at what CPU you have in here, and based on what your guys internally have assumed or have characterized that chip as being capable of hitting in terms of frequency, it says these are the light, medium, and extreme.
Yeah, so our engineers have to do a ton of testing. So they take all the CPUs and try to find out what's optimal limits for them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we want to have it safe enough so it's not going to crash people's systems. But obviously, there's a lot of factors that depend on what your CPU fan is and what CPU you're using. So they try to take into consideration all of those different things and try to come up with profiles that best match that.
And Intel CPUs these days are a lot more predictable than they were, let's say, 10 years ago in terms of overclocking. So it's kind of allowed the rise of those types of features without too much risk.
Yeah, definitely.
So here you have all the features that we would normally mess around with in the EFI setup, but they're all here, and almost all of them are adjustable in real time.
Yep, they're adjustable in real time. All you have to do is do the slider bar, or you can even just put in what your setting is. You can just actually even write what your setting is. So There's several different ways of inputting. And you can set different profiles as well, and save different profiles. So you can have your overclock profile, you can have your energy saving profile, whatever sort of profile you want to save.
Gotcha. And now you have fan control exposed here as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we had a lot of people come to us and ask. A lot of customers wanted more fan speed control. Mm-hmm. A lot, these days, a lot more people want to have multiple fans for their systems, and they want to do different things in terms of have quiet fans or loud fans, depending on what they're using their system for. So we've actually on our 8 series integrated, on our high-end boards we have up to 10 system fans. And many of those fans are smart fans, so you can actually control them. And in this software utility, EasyTune, you can actually calibrate what your fans are, your system fans. So it'll do its own testing where it'll find out how high it can actually spin, how low RPM it'll spin, and it'll calibrate it and adjust, pre-configured settings for your system fans.
Gotcha.
So silent, standard, and extreme. And then advanced, you can actually adjust your own different settings that you want. So this is the screen for the CPU fan, and all you have to do is change your inflection points based on temperature and RPM, and you can
define your own fan curve here, basically.
Yeah, and you can do that for your CPU OPT fan as well. That's for water block coolers, as well as your other system fans as well. They're all controllable from this user interface.
Very cool. Now, what are the alerts tab? What does that get you?
So alerts is basically if you have any issues, if you're going too high in your CPU temperature, it'll give you a warning saying, hey, your CPU for some reason is too hot. Check it out, see what's going on.
Gotcha. So it's just exposing, control for all the normal thermal triggers you get or all the triggers you would normally get in your EFI itself.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. And then that last tab is 3D power.
So 3D power, this used to be a separate application that we had, but we've integrated it into EasyTune, and this allows you to control the PWM. Basically the power delivery to your CPU. It allows you to change different settings based on your voltage or phases. Our high-end boards for 8 series are all using power stages from IR, as well as PWM controllers from IR. So there's since they're digital, there's actually different controls that you can do on the PWM side, and you can adjust those through this 3D power interface.
Cool. So that kind of rounds it up for what you guys are doing on the overclocking side, but you've paid just as much attention to what you're doing in some of your other boards. So why don't we take a look at what you guys are doing on the gaming series? So we got 2 boards here. What are we looking at?
So these are our G1 Killer gaming motherboards. We have a full-size ATX, the Sniper 5 motherboard, and we also have a micro ATX, which is our Sniper M5.
So the OC board we just looked at, obviously the priority there was overclocking. There are a bunch of these kind of system builder, folks running a shop kind of features that were there. What's unique about these boards?
So these boards are definitely designed for gaming. One of the most important things for gaming is obviously audio quality. Mm-hmm. So we spent a lot of time for adding different audio features on our motherboard. The first one that is obvious there, we have our Creative Soundcore 3D. It's covered by this gold cap that you see here. Basically, this is Creative's hardware. This is usually sold on an add-in card, but we're the first motherboard to put it on board.
So this is Creative's own codec and their own software and implementation that goes along with it.
Yep, correct. So we have Creative Soundcore 3D. They also have their software interface that we have with the boards. But one of the other unique things that we've done on this motherboard is we actually have, for the first time, this OP amp. So it's an actual removable amplifier on board. So you can actually adjust your amplifiers based on what your sound needs or characteristics are.
Interesting. So I see you have the amp exposed here, and you can just swap this out. The box comes with an additional amp?
Yep. So the box comes with 1 amp on board, and it also comes with an amp in this upgrade kit, as well as the extractor. So you can swap them out. You can buy your own amplifiers online. We also will be selling a upgrade kit that will have many different other amplifiers that aren't on board.
Gotcha. And then this drives one of the jacks on the back, right?
Correct. It drives the one stereo audio jack in the back.
Okay.
We also have another onboard amplifier. This one you can't remove it, but this is for headphones as well. And this actually outputs up to 60 ohms from this amplifier. So we actually have 2 amplifiers on board for your audio.
So then the other big feature here is you've, if I understand this correctly, you've physically segmented as much as possible the audio portion of the PCB from the rest. Right, so for the folks who don't know, these motherboards, they're made out of kind of multiple layers of where you can run signaling through, kind of stacked together. Now, this board is a 4 or a 6 layer design.
I believe this one's a 6 layer.
Okay, so there are 6 layers in which you can run power and ground over, and what you've done is you physically cut some of those layers, physically separating the audio area of the board from the rest of the board.
Yeah, because the audio, for the most part, is an analog signal, and the digital signal from the other side of the motherboards. Obviously, you have different signals. Your CPU, your memory, they're all running at different voltages and frequencies, so those signals can affect your analog signals. So we made that separation between the PCB layers, that power layer in between. We've on this motherboard, you can actually see all the way through the motherboard, so it's basically separated from those two segments.
And have you noticed in your testing, have you noticed like an actual difference from doing that? Obviously, that's not something that, we'd need a board designed with and without that feature to really test, but I'm assuming you guys have done that testing.
Yeah, it's funny, at our headquarters, we have a lot of different sound testing rooms. We've got an echo chamber. We've got different sound testing environments. We were able to test last generation's board because it didn't have that separation of the PCB. Definitely that was a slight issue that we had for cross-contamination of signals, but we definitely, in our testing this year with this separation, it definitely influences your audio quality, and having that purity of sound signal is definitely important. So
and in a similar vein, I see you guys went to gold-plated interconnects, not only on the audio but also with your HDMI and DisplayPort outputs here as well.
Yeah, we found that obviously gold, it's less chance of corrosion. If you've ever connected your headphone jack into maybe your iPod or whatever, and sometimes you hear that crackling noise, that's because your inputs are getting a little bit corroded. The good thing about gold is obviously it doesn't have that corrosion. It doesn't rust. It doesn't have that corrosion, that effect. So it prevents your audio signal again from having any interference.
And you guys have also done work on the capacitor side, driving all of the circuitry as well, right?
Yep, so we're using Nichicon audio capacitors. These are capacitors that are found on higher end boards. These are electrolytic capacitors. Obviously the rest of our motherboard has much more current going through it, so we want to use solid capacitors. But for the audio, it doesn't have a lot of current, and obviously for audio characteristics, electrolytic capacitors have better sound characteristics.
Cool. So that kind of gives us the highlights of the gaming boards. Now, can we've really focused on overclocking, we've focused on gaming, but you guys have something like upwards of 30 boards for the Haswell launch. Can you take us through kind of some of the highlights of the rest of your lineup?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you brought 8 boards here, but your entire lineup is even bigger. So let's at least talk about what you've got here, and then kind of give people direction as to what else you've got. So starting up here at the very high end, what is this?
So that board, that orange one, is the Z87X OC Force board.
Okay.
So this one is our high-end overclocking motherboard. This is probably our most expensive motherboard, or one of the most expensive.
Gotcha. And when you say most expensive, how high of a price are we talking?
I'm not sure if the U.S. pricing has actually finalized on these boards yet or not.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll be our most expensive.
Okay. And what does that give me? What do I get with that?
So for this motherboard, you have a PLX on board, so it does 4-way crossfire and 4-way SLI. You also have a lot of the overclocking features that I mentioned earlier, the onboard overclocking buttons. We also have a new heatsink design. This is a new thermal design that we're using. It's both a water block and fan cooling. And we've got a lot of USB on board, a lot of SATA. Basically, we threw everything but the kitchen sink onto this motherboard.
Got it. And then next to it?
Next to it is the OC Z87X OC motherboard.
Okay, so this is the one we did all of the overclocking demos with and everything
Correct.
like that. Got it. And then the two next to it are the 2 gaming boards we just looked at.
Correct. Those are the ones we talked about. Both the ATX Sniper 5 and the M5, the Micro ATX.
Okay. And you said the Sniper 5 is more of the kind of high-end price point, whereas the Micro ATX should be a little more, not quite mainstream, but better in pricing.
Correct. And those are the 2 gaming boards that we'll have at launch, and maybe after launch we're planning on having a couple of other gaming boards in different segments as well, so stay tuned to that.
Okay. And then going back down here, what are we looking at?
So basically our UD5 is our sort of mid-range, high mid-range of our segment. We have a lot of features on the UD5. This one is a Thunderbolt enabled motherboard. This one has, as you can see, the dual Thunderbolt, and this is the new version of Thunderbolt that'll allow 4K through a single Thunderbolt connection. Obviously, they act as a mini display port, and again, we have two like we had for last generation. This board also has onboard Wi-Fi module and Bluetooth 4.0, and it has a new redesigned antenna as well. So that's our UD5TH.
Okay.
And then down here we also have the Z87X UD3H. This is our more affordable 8 series motherboard. So obviously it doesn't have maybe all of the features that the higher end boards do, but it definitely has a much nicer price point. But it still has digital power phases. It's still got the onboard buttons like the power and reset. It also has a beefier heatsink than maybe in past generations that we've had.
And in terms of overclocking potential, it should still be pretty good. You just don't have all of the little bells and whistles in terms of customizability or...
Correct. I mean, obviously, when we design a platform, our board design is basically very similar in terms of our layout and trace paths. So we have our high-end boards where we add a lot of features, and then we start to take features off for the lower-end boards. But even in our own internal testing, we're seeing memory performance the same on this board, the UD3H, as we were seeing on our OC board.
Gotcha. But you don't get in this board or in any of the normal UD boards, you don't get the like the audio features that you do in the gaming series.
Correct. So we sort of segmented boards with features. So our gaming boards will have the audio features. Our overclocking has overclocking features, and we've tried to add, different, some boards have overclocking features even if they're not overclocking motherboards, and we've tried to add different things on different boards because obviously people have different usage. And,
but like the PCB separation for the audio area, that is exclusive to the gaming boards.
Yep, that's just on our gaming motherboards right now.
Gotcha.
Like I said, we may have different segments later on that will have those features as well.
Yeah, because that's something I can see being more universal, right? Everyone wants, as sound that's as isolated from the rest of the system as possible.
Yeah.
So what is this other micro ATX board that we're looking at?
So this board over here, this is our B85 motherboard, one of our B85 motherboards. I'm not sure actually which one. You can probably read on the PCB.
It's the D3H.
D3H. So this one actually enables Intel's Small Business Advantage. It comes with a software from Intel that allows small businesses to actually manage their PC needs. So there's things like USB blocker on board, or you can change your software, do different sort of system management through the software application.
Interesting. So you do get the we looked at the USB blocker feature on the gaming boards or on the OC board. Does that exist across your lineup as well?
Yep, that feature we have on all of our boards. It's just with SBA, Intel has their own sort of unique take on that.
Gotcha. And then we have a mini ITX board, and personally, I'm very excited about mini ITX just as a form factor for both media center use, but even high-end, high performance use. So what board is this?
This one's our Z87XN, Z87X Wi-Fi. Oh, I said it again. Sorry, Z87N Wi-Fi.
Okay.
This board is actually, obviously mini ITX. We have a mini PCIe Express card there that is our Wi-Fi card. Like you said, I think a lot of people like to see small form factors. They like to be able to put it in the living room or do different sort of setups with it. The one challenge that we have is obviously trying to put features on such a small motherboard.
Yes.
But this one, we try to. We've got that Wi-Fi Bluetooth card on board. We've got dual LAN on board, so it's convenient for a NAS system if you want to use it for that.
And what are the two LAN controllers?
So I think on this one is Intel LAN.
Okay.
And obviously, for such a small form factor, you're going to sacrifice certain things. Obviously, you only have one PCI Express slot and two memory slots as well. So, it's always a challenge for us to try to maximize features, yet, we have such a small footprint on this board. So, but more and more of our boards, I think, you'll start to see more of this sort of condensation of features. A lot of people like mini ITX. So,
yeah, personally, Mini ITXs. If I were building another system today, I'd build it out of Mini ITX. It's just the flexibility offered by the larger boards isn't something that I feel like I need anymore. And I do prefer kind of a smaller form factor. And then you look at things like NVIDIA's GeForce Titan, right? You can get a ton of performance in something that you don't need to go to multiple GPUs for.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing, even with Intel, their NUC, their next unit of computing, Gigabyte has their own version of that as well, which is an even smaller platform. So definitely for our 8 series, we've tried to take as many features as we can and put them on different models and have a wide range of motherboards to fit whatever our customers actually need. So from Mini ITX all the way to full-size ATX and 4-way graphics, you can pretty much find on one of our 30 motherboards something for you.
Awesome, Colin. I want to thank you for taking the time out to show us all these boards, and we look forward to seeing more from you guys as Haswell launches and as the lineup kind of develops over time.
Thank you, and everybody. I hope you guys learned a little bit, and I hope if you have any questions, we have all of our information on our website, and come and check out some of our new motherboards that we have for 8 series.